HUD Secretary Scott Turner is a complete joke, a mere puppet for the Trump administration. It's blatantly obvious that all he does is say what they want him to say, what his administration prepped him to say, and he says it as if he actually believes it, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. And I think that that's what irritates me the most about this clown. And this is how you can tell when someone is a liar or trying to manipulate you. In the midst of them lying, they'll throw in some truth just to try to justify their lie and give it more credibility. So when they feed you a little truth, they'll know that you know that that's the truth, and it'll be easier for you to believe what they feed you next, which is a lie. And I'm about to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Don't be fooled by this guy. It's no way that he actually believes that cutting the budget in half is actually better for HUD and will allow them to help more people with housing, rental assistance, and other programs in his department. It makes no sense. In my last video, I went over Scott Turner's testimony in front of the House Appropriations Committee and how they called him out on his ridiculous proposal. And in this video, picking up where we left off, we're gonna go over highlights from his testimony with the Senate Appropriations Committee, and also how I believe he exposed himself as someone who doesn't even believe the BS that's coming out of his own mouth. We're about to break it all down, so please stick around and let's get to it. So like I just said, HUD Secretary Scott Turner recently testified in front of the House Appropriations Committee regarding HUD's fiscal year 2026 budget proposal. The proposal suggested cutting HUD's budget in half and transferring a lot of their federal programs into state programs. I did a video on the highlights of his testimony. If you haven't already, you can check it out. But through his entire testimony, he really didn't give any specific details. All he said was that the old way of doing things wasn't working, and he constantly repeated the words effectively and efficiently.
To be efficient and effective, more quickly and efficiently. Effectively and efficiently, to more effectively and efficiently. We're going to be more effective and more efficient.
How?
Works effectively for the people we serve. Efficient and effective as it pertains to more efficiently and serve people, sir, in an effective and efficient manner. Streamline and the effectiveness, more effectively and efficiently serve. Effectively serve
How?
the most vulnerable.
How?
Effectively serve
How?
elderly and
Answer
disabled.
my question.
Yes,
How?
But they saw straight through his BS testimony. They saw that he wasn't answering any questions, and they called him out on it.
Well, thank you, sir. It was a great answer, but it didn't demonstrate a plan.
So when you just say refocus and reform, it falls on deaf ears. It doesn't mean anything.
All you have been doing is talking around and stroking your ego, sir.
So far, we can't seem to get any information about budget detail, about what it is that you all are doing. It's a lot of great words, but what are dollars and cents?
Now, next up was him testifying in front of the Senate Appropriations Committee regarding that same budget proposal. And of course, he started with the same BS from his last testimony.
Now we're reversing course to be efficient and to be effective more quickly and efficiently.
But of course, the Senate addressed their concerns and called this joke of a budget proposal out as well.
The entire point of your department is to help Americans keep a roof over their head. Mm-hmm. I am really afraid that pretty much everything that you and President Trump have done to date appears kind of in direct opposition to that goal. First off, the president's illegal funding freezes are causing chaos across the country. And on top of that, you're pushing out 2,300 staff who are dedicated public servants with decades of experience. And I just don't see how you can tell us with a straight face that forcing out over a quarter of your workforce is going to have no effect on your department's ability to meet its statutory responsibilities under law. And now, after all the damage that's been done, you are here today requesting that Congress slash funding for your department nearly in half. Nearly in half. That would force millions of Americans out of their homes. It is kind of absurd to claim that we cannot afford basic programs that keep people off the streets, but we can hand trillions of dollars in new tax cuts to billionaires and big corporations. You know, housing affordability and homelessness is a crisis in many places across the country. You know that. But this administration just appears to me to be trying to make it all worse. And I'll tell you right now, looking at your budget request, as far as I'm concerned, as vice chair of this committee, it's not going anywhere.
I must say, just right off the top, that I looked at this budget. You are a person of faith, as are the rest of us on this panel. You share a commitment to caring for our vulnerable neighbors, the least of these. But this budget, Mr. Secretary, is not a serious proposal. It does not meet the urgent housing needs of our country. A 50% cut to all the programs at HUD. would be devastating to families.
It's good to see that during his testimony in front of both the House and Senate Appropriations Committee, that his joke of a budget proposal was constantly getting called out. No, HUD's current housing programs aren't perfect, but no department's programs are perfect. And this is where I say he tries to mix in some truth to justify his lies. He was constantly calling out HUD's programs of being full of waste, fraud, and abuse.
HUD's rental assistance to be full of waste, fraud, and abuse. There's a lot of waste, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of abuse in our system. We found that HUD's rental assistance to be full of waste, fraud, and abuse.
Now let's be honest, is there waste, fraud, and abuse as it pertains to certain HUD programs? Yes, whether you're talking about housing authorities, staff, tenants, landlords, all across the board. It is what it is. But guess what? That happens in every governmental department. And we don't even have to be talking about the government. That happens everywhere. billion-dollar companies like Target or Walmart, they have to deal with waste, fraud, and abuse. They have departments specifically for catching employees and customers that steal. They even calculate loss from theft into their numbers, because the unfortunate truth is that that's what you have to account for when you deal with people. Maybe not the majority of people, but guess what? There will always be a small group of people that will try to take advantage of, exploit, abuse, commit fraud. That's just what happens when you deal with people. And HUD programs are no different. So that's the real problem that needs to be addressed. Cutting HUD's budget in half is not addressing the real problem, because you're still going to have to deal with waste, fraud, and abuse. So now you're creating an even bigger problem. And now you can't even help some of the ones who weren't committing waste, fraud, and abuse. They're the ones getting hurt. And this is exactly where I think he exposed himself. He's constantly saying that HUD is plagued with waste, fraud, and abuse. Mind you, HUD only oversees these programs. That's their role. They distribute the funds to state and local governments and public housing authorities. And HUD lets them run their programs. So the waste, fraud, and abuse that he speaks of would be coming at the state and local levels. And he also called out certain states and their leadership as it pertains to waste, fraud, and abuse.
There has been a stewardship issue in California as it pertains to taxpayer dollars. You know, California is not a good example of proper leadership. As you know, I was just in New York City, visiting New York City and NYCHA, the public housing authority there, which has many problems as it pertains to stewardship, as it pertains to fraud and abuse, and authorities there, leadership there, being indicted.
And along with certain states, he also called out public housing authorities.
Do you feel like that those housing authorities are working efficiently for HUD?
No, ma'am. And we do have over 3,000 public housing authorities around our country, many of which are not operating appropriately. You know, I've traveled around the country and visited public housing authorities and seen some of the conditions that people are living in across our country, and some of them are deplorable.
And this is ironic, because his main objective of his budget proposal is not only cutting the budget in half, but also shifting the responsibility of these programs to the states and local governments.
To encourage states to have skin in the game for the funding and design of their own rental assistance. But this is a way for states to identify their unique needs and then to distribute their funds as they see fit. Give states an opportunity to have skin in the game, to identify their unique needs.
So, if he truly believes that states, localities, and public housing authorities are full of waste, fraud, and abuse, and aren't being ran efficiently and effectively, why would his solution be to completely give them the control and full responsibility of HUD's most important housing programs that deal with America's most vulnerable population, low income, elderly, disabled, and homeless? Why would he trust state and local governments and housing authorities if he already accuses them of being full of waste, fraud, and abuse? He's completely contradicting himself. Even when he was directly asked whether he believes that state and local governments can handle managing these programs, this is what he had to say.
Do you actually believe state and local governments have the ability to pick up the costs for services that will be shifted to them if all of these programs are eliminated?
Thank you, Senator. And I appreciate your perspective on everything, and thank you to your service, you know, both locally and here nationally. You know, Senator, HUD has record funding. And currently, we're only able to serve 1 out of 4 eligible families with $77 billion. Mm-hmm. And I alluded to this before, and I will say again, we have to do something different. And we can't, when I alluded to saying, you know, you can't keep running the same plays. What I mean, there's the best teams that I've seen in my career are the teams that make adjustments. We've been running plays that have caused us to lose. And so, sir, this is a different way of looking at things. It's a rethinking. That's the paradigm that I'm talking about. That's the culture shift I'm talking about. It's a new way of looking at it, a new way of rethinking it. We have to look at this in a different way and do it better.
Mr. Secretary,
Yes, sir.
with all due respect,
He was asked a very simple and direct question and couldn't give a simple and direct answer. He started speaking in circles, saying the same old thing he has been saying, which in actuality is saying nothing at all. 1 minute in his testimony, he says that he will give states and localities a chance to have some skin in the game and they can more efficiently and effectively serve their communities. In the next minute, he's saying that they're full of waste, fraud, and abuse and have stewardship issues. This guy is a talking oxymoron. I'm glad both the House and Senate Appropriations Committee saw straight through his bogus proposal and called him out on it. And it'll be interesting to see how much money is appropriated for HUD for fiscal year 2026. So make sure you guys like and subscribe to stay up to date with housing news in this country. And as always, thanks for watching.